Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Austin.
Morning.
Give me 1 second. I'm gonna give it a few minutes for people to log in, just as we usually do, especially being a week off or 2 weeks off, I guess.
Are you feeling better?
I'm getting there. I'm still congested, and the girls have been fighting something off all weekend, so I'm working from home again today just to be safe.
Yeah. What the
Is
hell is
is there really like a mortgage class today, or is that in person or on Zoom as well?
That's a great question. I believe it's only in person. It's something ACM just started doing. Um, I don't know if anybody's been at the last ones or not, but I think it's only in person.
I was at the last one and I was the only one there, and it was really, they made it kind of personalized to what I wanted to know. So I would really suggest going. It was great.
Cool. Thank you, Chris. All right, I'm gonna give it another minute or two and then we'll get started. Barring anything unusual, we will have group coaching tomorrow. My plan is to do a mock contract writing class. So essentially, everybody's going to write an offer on the same property, and you'll turn your contracts into me. That way, I can give feedback. We may make it kind of like a little contest to see who can win, so to speak. But it'll be open forum, so you're allowed to ask questions, give feedback, etc. as we're doing it. And then we'll talk about some strategies to win when it's a multiple offer situation. We're seeing some of those pick back up again, both with inventory being low and just time of year. There's not as much on the market right now. So when you're representing buyers specifically, there's a few things that we can focus in on to make your offer stand out. So we're going to talk about that in group coaching tomorrow. So if you can be there, please do it. And if you can bring a computer or a tablet, that would be helpful, because then you can write your offer on transaction desk. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So, as you know, I always like to start with a bold law. Focus on the plan, not the problem. I also was listening to the MREA podcast this morning, and it was with Jay Papasan, who, if y'all don't know, he's the author, well, one of the co-authors of the MREA book. He also co-wrote The One Thing and Your First Home and a couple other books with Gary. And I wanted to share this quote with you because it's applicable to both what we're talking about today and then everything moving forward. So, if you're running a real estate business, your one thing is lead generation. I don't care how good your service plan is or how great you are working with people. If you don't have customers to serve, no one is going to know. Jay Papasan. And if you haven't listened to that podcast already, I strongly advise. I'm about halfway through myself. So, today we're talking about something, excuse me, a little bit different. It is solely related to lead generation, but I wanted to give you kind of a sample ideal day, um, time block wise, all the way through. This is also mirrors what my day looks like. And so if I do not have appointments, I'll share kind of what I do differently. And then if I do have appointments, this is kind of what it looks like. Now, obviously on Mondays and Tuesdays when I have group coaching in the mornings, things are a little bit different. But this would be considered this would be considered an ideal day. Rhonda, were you saying something to us, or was that?
I'm so sorry. Let me put mute.
Oh, okay, no problem. I just want to make sure I heard you. All right, so Time blocking. You've heard this before. If it's not on your calendar, it does not exist. Now, there's a course that used to be taught in Keller Williams called 36-12-3. And what that refers to is selling 36 transactions over the course of 12 months, working 3 hours a day, or lead gen 3 hours a day. And the ideal day is surrounded or built off of this. So we want to arrive to our place of work. Now, if you're not going into the office, that's okay. This could be your home office or wherever you're going to be doing your lead gen from. But we want to be there by 8 a.m. The reason why is you take about 30 to 45 minutes to prepare who you're going to call, what you're going to say. If you're going to be on a practice to prospect call or something of that nature, a role play, whether it's with myself, an accountability partner, or on one of the many KW or non-KW offered calls, a lot of that takes place before 9 a.m. So you're going to prepare your call list. At 9 o'clock, you start dialing. Now, the most effective form of lead generation, and we're going to talk about this again here in a little bit, is direct phone calls. You're having a conversation with somebody. In today's modern world, texting is equivalent to that. Now, it will depend on your client types. So, for example, Andrew Brooker, who's an agent in our office, he does not like texting. He prefers phone calls. I say that a little bit jokingly because he and I are almost counter opposite of each other. I prefer texting because I can respond in a quicker or timely fashion, especially if I'm tied up in something else. However, the most effective form of conversation or lead generation is a phone call. So we want to keep that at the forefront of our lead gen strategies. Now, your first hour is oftentimes your most important, and we're going to be calling people out of the database. We'll talk about what that looks like here in a second. But then your second hour, so 9 to 10 is database, 10 to 11 is going to be pipeline or follow-up. We'll talk about that here in detail. And then your third hour is going to be whatever niche you're focusing on. So if you did an open house that past weekend, you may be following up with those leads. If you have one coming up, you may be reaching out to those leads coming up. If you're specializing in social media or events or investors, et cetera, this is where that third hour is going to focus on. Then you can take an hour lunch break. Then 1 to 2, you're going to actually follow up with people that you either did not reach before, so you can try them again, or occasionally when you're on lunch or when you're calling pipeline people, somebody may have called you back. So let's walk through this real quickly. If I'm on my phone calls and I am reaching out to people and making contacts with my database in the first hour, and then my second hour, I've moved on to my pipeline and I'm following up with my active buyers and sellers. If somebody from my database calls me back, I'm going to continue calling my pipeline. I'm going to miss that call, and then I'm going to follow up with them during the follow-up period later. This is how you ensure your new lead gen or your active lead gen takes place. So if it's still during that first hour and the database person calls me back, I can obviously reach out to them or communicate with them. But if I've moved on to a separate niche or a separate pipeline group or group of contacts, I want to focus on those people. The idea of the one thing is that by doing that one thing, nothing else will matter, or everything else will fall into place. So if I'm working on my pipeline, those are people that have raised their hand and they're looking to buy or sell. That wants to be given all of my focus. Now, 2 p.m., we're going to prep for appointments. And then the rest of the day is left open for appointments. If I do not have appointments, I'm going to focus on more lead generation. Because if I don't have appointments, there's no way to sell anything. So I need to keep lead generating until I can find an appointment. All right, let's talk lead gen. So kind of what I just said, if I don't have an appointment that day, my entire focus is on lead generation. The number one solution to all problems in real estate is more leads. Even if you have a full pipeline, if they are not going under contract, you need more leads. I have a buyer right now that I've been working with since about August, September. They have not gone under contract. We've looked at 30, 32, 33, something like that houses, and they are still looking. So my solution to that is I need to go find other clients that are more ready, willing, and able to go under contract. It's not to say that I abandon them or that I fire them or get rid of them as a client. I just have to put more of my attention in people that are ready, willing, and able to buy or sell now, because that's how we get paid. And we'll talk about pipeline here in a second. Lead generation ideally happens in the morning. The reason why is because it's our most important thing, and it's before anything else can come up to get in the way. If I do my lead generation in the morning and then I go to a team meeting at 11 if an agent stops me for questions or they need to sit down and talk to me about writing a contract and I sit down with them and help them through that, I don't have to worry about missing my most important thing because it's already taken place and been done. Same thing for yourself. If you do your lead gen in the morning and then you get a call from your kid, they're feeling sick around lunchtime and you have to go pick them up early from school and it kind of changes your day. That's where lead gen happening in the morning can be effective so it doesn't get in the way later. And then the most effective form of lead gen, we just talked about this, is calls or texts, direct calls or texts. All right, a little bit of an agenda here. We've kind of got into some of this already, but we're going to talk about each of these categories in detail. All right, so remember, our first hour is focused on the database. We want to follow a schedule or a plan on who to call and when. We've talked about this before. DTD2 is Do the Database 2 or the second edition. This is referring to calling or texting our database personal phone calls 4 times a year. So if you have 500 people in your database, you have to call all 500 people over the course of 3 months in order to get to them 4 times a year. So you'll see a little bit later down on this slide, it says divide your total number in your database by 3, and that is the monthly amount of calls you need to make. Now, keep in mind, you should be adding to your database every week as well. And so some of this is going to overlap with itself. We'll talk about ways that you can strategize or contact these people. But for example, if this week I'm calling last names P and L, and I add somebody to the database with the last name L at the end of this week, they're going to get called the next time P and L come up. Odds are, if I'm adding them to the database, I already had a conversation with them this week. So it makes sense that the next call would be on the next rotation. Now, if I add them at the beginning of this week and I haven't contacted them yet, I still have time the rest of this week to make that database connection. So it somewhat depends on when you add them. Now, that is the goal, is 4 calls per year. This can change. You can communicate with them more often. There's been a lot of stories and success and case studies coming out lately of the higher producing teams, especially in Keller Williams world, are doing many more touches than 36 per year. We're working on our business plan now, and it's going to be a lot closer to like 60 to 70 touches per year. And a lot of that comes around events. So if you think about it, if you're doing 4 events per year, you may call, text, email 3 different ways to invite people to the event. Then you do the event itself, and then you call, text, or email people afterwards that missed the event or you're thinking that came. That's 7 or 8 touches right there around one event. And so it's okay that you communicate with people more often. And matter of fact, those that are higher referral sources or higher referral partners in your database should be communicated with more. We've talked about that previously in training, but 36 touch is kind of the minimum or the goal, and it's okay to build upon that. Now, the second bullet note here is some ideas, ways or what you can be saying right now when you're reaching out to people. Wishing them happy holidays or Merry Christmas is obviously a good one. Offering free home value reports. I did this last week with my database, and I got 3 seller leads out of it from one single purposeful touch. And basically, I'm sending texts or emails to older past clients and what I would consider B's and C's in my database. And I'm simply saying, hey, I'm doing end of the year home value reports for my clients and top people. Would you like one? And that's all I'm saying. And the 3 people that responded said, actually, yes, we've been meaning to reach out to you. Can you let us know? We may be talking to you about selling in the spring. The reason why I'm targeting B's and C's with this is because my A's are already getting free home value reports. A part of that 36 touch, they already get updated on their home value twice a year. Really, my B's and C's get it too, but that personal touch of saying like, hey, I'm getting ready to do this for my database. Would you like one? Is going to create a little bit more engagement. Now, I prefer calls or text to do this. You can also do a video text message to be a little bit more personal, but email works well as well, or also. If you're doing events and want to invite them to an event, this can also be community events or holiday events. So a lot of times people are meeting with Santa, or neighborhoods are doing events or coat drives, or there's tacky light tours, etc. You can invite them to things even if you're not necessarily the host. Maybe let them know, hey, I'm going to be at Hardywood Brewery for when the band is there this weekend. Would love to see you. I'll buy a drink. Come meet me. You can also share winter house tips. Those are easy to find. Just simply Google them or get some from your vendor partners. And then offering your vendor referrals. This is a really impactful way to give back or give value, both to your vendors, which we're going to talk about at the end of the day, and as a way to stay in touch with your clients or your database is by saying, hey, I have preferred people. If you ever need somebody, even if you're not thinking about buying or selling, give me a call. I'd love to refer people to you. And this is one of the major ways that I stay in touch with our database, whether it's landscapers, plumbers, electricians, etc. These are people you want to have readily available, and you can send a list of all of them, or you can just stay in touch with people to give them to them as they're needed. Questions on the database before we move on? All right, cool. So, pipeline. This is arguably the most important piece of your business. Now, your pipeline are people that are buyers and sellers actively looking to transaction, or you've already had a substantive conversation with them about real estate. Now, we sort our database and we sort our pipeline on A's, B's, and C's. We've talked about our database before. A's refer you multiple opportunities per year. B's may refer you, may not refer you. C's are in your database for a reason, but they're not necessarily going to refer you. I always give vendor partners here as an example, like a lender. A lender is obviously working with multiple different agents, so they may not be in a position where they can send you referrals. However, they're still a part of your key business and should be a part of your follow-up plan. When it comes to our pipeline, A's, B's, and C's refers to how what their timeline looks like when they're going to be selling or buying. If they're an A lead, they are looking to move within the next 30 to 45 days. An A buyer is actively looking at houses. They've already signed a buyer agreement. Maybe they're going to open houses. They've committed to you as an agent. An A seller, you're working through some staging, some prep work, maybe last minute repairs, you're getting ready to do photos. It may or may not be in coming soon status, but it's definitely an A lead getting ready to sell. A B lead is 60 to 90 days. A lot of times your B buyers are waiting for something else to happen. They're improving credit. They have a house to sell first. They are waiting for a lease to end up, and the lease has 6 months left, something of that nature. However, they're ready, willing, and able, meaning they've already talked to a lender, they're pre-approved, they're starting to look at houses, they're a little bit more serious. And then a C is 3 to 6 months out. Maybe they are colder leads, or they have a house to sell in another state and you don't have necessarily control over that. Or they're waiting for a lease to end up and there's a little bit more substantial time left on that lease. A basic follow-up plan for your pipeline. A's you should be communicating with weekly. B should be biweekly, and C should be monthly at a minimum. Now, this is a direct follow-up touch. This is not sending them home options in the MLS. If they're buyers, they should be set up with those anyways. Regardless of their A, B's, or C's, you should be sending them home options that fit their criteria. If they're a buyer, if they're a seller, some of the touches you can be doing are sending them value reports. So if there's a recent sale in their area, you can also be letting them know that things are coming on the market. So if there's active homes that are comparable properties, you want to share those so they know what they're going up against. Same thing if something goes pending. You can give them staging checklists. You can be sharing vendors so that they may use to get their house ready. But some of this follow-up touch is just what I call a status call, where you're just reaching out to them and saying, hey, just checking in. Did you get a chance to see the homes I sent last week? What are your thoughts? Yeah, Lynn Ann, what's up?
I missed the very beginning of what you said about this. You're talking about the buyers, right? Right
Buyers
now.
or sellers. Yep.
All right. So what was the very first thing that you said? Because I missed it.
So first I did distinguish between the database and this. This is considered
No,
your
no, no, no,
pipeline.
no, just the buyers should be set up on home searches.
Oh,
Right. Is that where
yeah,
we are? What did
yep.
you say at the very beginning of that?
Regardless if they are A, B, or C, you should be sending them home options. So it does not matter of their time of when they're looking to buy or sell. You should be sending them options on the MLS. Now, whether you like to do it manually or you want to set up an auto search, that is depending on you as a client or as an agent. I personally do manual searches for all of my people because I'm just not as tech forward as I probably should be. Now, this kind of jumps down to the last point too. You want to share your app with anybody that's thinking about buying a home. A, it's a value add and it's a touch that you can stay in touch with them. B, you can see what they're looking at. And so if they are a C lead and then you see an increase in activity on the app that they're looking at more homes, you can reach out to them that way and follow up. But regardless of their timeline, you want to be sending them home searches or home options that fit their criteria. What I like to do is I'll send them an email once to twice a week, usually at the very beginning of the week and at the very end of the week, of things that match their criteria. And either in between or after I've sent both searches is when I'll do my follow-up touch. So I'll say, hey, just want to let you know I sent you an email with a couple different ideas. Let me know if any catch your eye, if you want to take a look this weekend. So my follow-up touch is pointing them in the direction of the homes that I'm already sending. All right. Anything else on the pipeline? Now, the easiest way to keep track of this is to make an Excel sheet. I'm going to show you real quickly what mine looks like. Some of you have seen this before. It does not have to be this overly involved. However, this is kind of a basic pipeline. You're going to distinguish between sellers and buyers. You're going to have whether that A, B, or C is on the side over here, like we talked about. A's next 30 days, B's 60 to 90 days, C's are farther out. You want to keep track of how many people you have in your pipeline, whether that's manually or personally. And then you're going to have your transaction board down at the bottom when they go under contract. The easiest way to do it is with an Excel sheet or a Google sheet because you can access that from anywhere. And then you want to add to this every single week. So as you're having a substantial conversation with people, they go on there. Now, the most typically what people will do is they'll get added as a B or a C, and then in the follow-up, you'll work them up the transaction board. So they may be a C until we find the right house, and then we start looking at houses. Now they're a B, and then we really start looking at things that they're interested in, or they talk to a lender, they get pre-approved, they're getting all their ducks in a row, then they become an A, and then they start writing offers. But this is how you can start getting tabs on your business. If you have a goal of selling, let me go back to the pipeline. Your pipeline goal is going to be basically half of what your annual goal is. Another way of looking at it is it's double the amount of leads for whatever our quarterly goals are, which is the same thing as saying half our annual goal. So if I have an annual goal of 48 deals, I need to do 12 every 3 months. So I need to have at least 24 people in my pipeline. Now, realistically, if I'm trying to do 12 deals, I need to have 3 to 4 A's every single month, or I'm not going to hit my goal. Really, I need to have 4 to 5 A's, or I'm not going to hit my goal. Because if they're not going under contract that month as an A, then I'm not going to reach my goal. If your goal is 24 deals, you're going to have half that. It's going to be 12. And so you need to have 3 to 4 is going to be closer to the 12. If you have 24, it's going to be a lot higher. Does that make sense? All right. Open house follow-up. Now, we've talked about this before. Your 2 main lead levers for any agent, regardless of experience, should be sphere of influence, meaning your database, and then open houses. You need to have part of your calendar every single day, preferably, if not every single week, devoted to following up with people from an open house. Now, even if you did an open house 2 or 3 weeks ago, you still need to be following up with those people. It takes on average 7 to 9 contacts before you have a conversation or convert somebody. And so just because you called or texted them once after the open house and thanked them for coming doesn't mean they're a dead lead if they didn't respond, and doesn't mean they are done following up with, or you're moving on from them. Now, if they tell you they're working with another agent, they don't need anything, obviously you can take them off your open house follow-up list. But you should be following up with people that you've done any open houses with and connected with, especially if you have their contact information. We've talked about this before, but I like to vary the way that I communicate with these people when I'm following up with them. Calls, text, emails, if you have an address, sending them a thank you note. All of these are important to vary because everybody has a preferred communication method. And some people are going to respond differently. Not to mention, if they work full time, they may be able to answer text or emails when they can't answer a phone call. One of the easiest ways to follow up is to communicate what's going on with that property. So if you do an open house on a Sunday, it goes under contract on Wednesday the following week. Reach back out to everybody that came by the open house and let them know that you went under contract, and then offer them to find something similar, or ask what they would change about that property if that one wasn't the one for them. Maybe you can communicate with them by saying, okay, I understand this house didn't work for you. What would you have changed, or what would you like differently in a house? Did you have to have a first floor bedroom? Did you need to have a third bath? Was the fenced backyard a deal breaker? Did it not have a garage, etc.? You can also share other comparable properties or what's available in the neighborhood, especially what's coming up. You can offer to stay in touch with them to communicate what's coming up. Hey, I noticed you really like living in 123 Main Street's neighborhood. I know that house particularly didn't work for you, but if it's okay with you, I'd love to keep you in the loop on what comes up for sale in there, so we can take a look at anything that might connect or check more of your boxes. And we always want to be giving value. If you give more than you receive, you will receive more than you can possibly need. What I mean by that is you want to be giving, offering buyer guides, seller guides, staging checklists, vendor lists, your free app, home searches on what's coming up in the neighborhood, etc. All of that is important to be giving without asking for anything in return. Yeah, Lynn Ann, what you got?
So when you're following up with the open house people and you say to them, can I stay in touch with you and let you know what's available? When do you go for getting the buyer agreement signed?
I don't worry about a buyer agreement until I'm getting ready to show them houses.
Okay, so if they say, I didn't like the fact that there were stairs in the front with no railing, right? So I need a house that is easier accessible, and you know of one. What do you do at that point?
I'll send it to them. I'll
So
share
you
it with
just send them the MLS listing.
Yep. And that's part of this giving
And then-
offer, giving value. I don't mind. That's part of my
Okay.
job, and part of the way that I'm going to convert people is by giving. The more that I communicate with somebody and the more offers of value that I give them, even if it's letting them know other houses or showing them extra work that I'm taking, the extra steps to find them something that better suits their needs, we don't need to worry about the buyer agreement until we physically have to show them a house. Now, if we can get them to sitting down to have a buyer consultation where we can say, hey, I know we're not really seeing anything we like in the MLS, but if you'd like, let's grab a cup of coffee, talk really in detail about what your buyer needs are. And I can show you some of the extra services that I can do for my clients to find them homes that aren't on the market. That could be an opportunity time where you can get a buyer agreement signed. And that's where you're going to share things like office exclusive listings. Office exclusive listings only get shared with our clients, because we can't show the house because it's not in the MLS unless we have a buyer agreement. Good question. All right. Anything else on open house follow-up before we move on? Cool. All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about social media. We've talked about this before. This is starting to get into that third hour of lead generation in the morning. Now, it is also totally fine and totally okay if you do 3 hours and you spend the entire 3 hours on your database, or you spend an hour and a half on your database and an hour and a half on your pipeline, or 2 on your database and 1 on your pipeline. It does not have to be 1 hour each. If you're focusing on database and you're focusing on open houses and that's filling your pipeline up, that's perfect. This is if you need more or if you're not getting enough out of your database. A lot of agents, myself included, do not have a large enough database to reach our transaction goals for next year. So we are needing to add other layers to A, grow the database, and B, find more business. And so that is where this other lead gen time is going to come. Now, I like to say focus on one social media platform to start. You do not need to be in all places at once unless you are a very large team. And if you are a very large team, you're going to have people devoted towards your social media for you in an admin role. Now, every single person on this call is not a very large team. Barbara's on a very large team, but she's an individual agent. And the rest of us are all either small teams or no teams. And so do not worry about trying to be in all places at once. We want to focus on one platform, and it's your favorite one or the one that you're already on actively or that you just easily understand. So some people can connect on a higher level on Facebook or on LinkedIn versus TikTok, or some people do better on Instagram than they do on Facebook. There are demographic stats that we've talked about on our social media training related to each of these apps. So if you were going after listings, for example, I would be focusing on Facebook and not TikTok. If you're going after first-time home buyers, TikTok or Instagram would be one that I would focus on. If you're looking at vendors or business referrals or partnerships or agent-to-agent referrals, that's where something like LinkedIn will come into play, et cetera, et cetera. Now, you want to pick a favorite platform, and the goal is the 10-5-1 rule. We're looking to like 10 things, comment on 5 things, or share, and then 1 direct message. Now, that's every day you work. So if you're spending a 5-day work week, you're looking at 50, 25, and 5. This is at a minimum. The more direct messages you can have with people, the more engagement you're getting, the better you're going to be involved, or the more response times you're going to get. Again, the goal is to connect with people. We want to add them to the database if we can. We can invite them to events. We want to create engagement. The number one way to create engagement is with polls. You can create polls both as a Facebook post or as a story or in your Instagram stories. You can also just simply ask questions as a direct post or a story. A couple examples is, should you buy your home, look to buy a home first, or sell your home first if you're looking to sell and buy at the same time? How much down payment is needed to buy a home? When should you meet with an agent? There's a lot of these good examples out there. Just simply Google questions to ask on social media for realtors. And then when people respond, that is your opportunity to message them for direct engagement or direct message them. A lot of times you'll get answers that aren't necessarily correct. So for example, the down payment one, how much money do you need to put down to buy a house? A lot of people still think you need 20% down to buy a house. If they put 20%, don't comment on there and say wrong or not true. You can direct message them and say, what makes you think that you need 20% down to buy a house? Have you heard about first-time homebuyer grants? Have you heard about lower down payments? People will oftentimes say, yeah, but isn't it bad if you don't put 20% down? The only reason why it's bad is because you may have to pay for what's called private mortgage insurance. All this really means is that your monthly payment might be a little bit higher. However, if you're putting less than 20% down, your monthly payment's going to be higher anyways. The difference here is if you're buying your first house in particular, the average first-time home buyer stays in their house 5 to 7 years. 17% of a purchase price is not going to get made up in the home in the monthly payment difference. So what I mean by that is if you're putting 3% down instead of 20% down, saving that extra 17% cash down payment is going to go a lot further. By the time you move or sell that house, you're not going to have made that money up in the monthly savings you would make by putting that extra payment down. Not to mention, first-time home buyers oftentimes are buying houses that may need a little bit of work, or if something were to go wrong, they may be a little bit more cash poor. And so it makes more sense to save the money in their bank account and use it as they need, or use that money to afford the little bit higher down payment or the little bit higher monthly payment, rather than putting a larger down payment down. Now, your lender partner should be educating your clients on this conversation. However, this is also an opportunity for you to add value to educating your clients. I like to do this in the buyer consultation meeting. The reason why we refer them to a lender early on is because of these types of conversations. We want to be able to say, hey, the whole point of talking with the lender is to build your ideal budget. Your ideal budget is in two parts. How much money are you going to need to close on that house, meaning your down payment and your closing costs, and what monthly payment are you comfortable with? This is all content that you can be putting out on social media. Back to the thing we were talking about with our pipeline, we want to be giving value away or giving free education away. Frequently asked questions in real estate are easily Googled or searched, but that doesn't mean that buyers or sellers are going to Google and searching for those answers. And if they are, wouldn't you rather be the source of information instead of them going to Google? So use these frequently asked questions to create your content ideas and then put that content out there on social media for people to research by reading your social media and staying apart or on top of what's going on in the real estate world. This is also going to set you up as a real estate expert or a content expert in the market. Any questions on social media? We got one more slide. Cool. Now, last but certainly not least, you want to devote a little bit of time each week to communicating with your vendors and your business partners, especially if you're in the referral world. So I've talked to some of you off air about this, about setting up meetings, whether it's an investment or a networking group, or just meeting with people one-on-one to build out your vendor list. You want to communicate with them regularly and offer these opportunities to go meet with them. Back to the daily calendar, the ideal schedule, those appointments in the afternoons can be devoted towards some of these one-on-one appointments. It doesn't necessarily have to be showing houses or going on listing appointments. It may be just getting a coffee or sitting down face-to-face with some of these vendors or business partners, which is what this one-on-one mutually benefiting meeting is talking about. When you're sitting down with them, you can ask them things like, would you be open to co-sponsoring events? Would you be open to me featuring you in my newsletter? And if you do that, would you be open to sharing the newsletter with your database? Can we feature each other on social media? It's very easy for them to just share some of your posts on their social media, and now you're getting exposed to all new levels of people. And then lastly, you can invite them to open houses to co-sponsor. It's always a benefit to have somebody else at the open house with you, especially the slow ones, because then you have somebody to talk to. But again, if you're hosting an open house and you're bringing a lender or an insurance provider with you to the open house, that is doubling the touches that you have to invite people to it. So if we make a flyer for that open house earlier in the week and you send it to your lender, they can now send it to everybody they know to share it with their people in their database on who's going to invite to the open house, not to mention share it on their social medias. All right, that is all I have today. The last little thing is don't forget to keep track of your scorecard. Want to be keeping track of conversations, database ads, appointments, and then any agreements that are being written. Yeah, Lynn, what you got?
So the vendors that you would invite to an open house, you would limit that to like what you said, lenders and what was the other one you said?
Lenders or
Because I
home
mean,
insurance.
would you invite a plumber to come to an open house? That doesn't.
Not necessarily, unless they have something applicable to the house. So if the house maybe needs some bathroom renovations or something like that, and you wanted to have a plumber on site that can kind of talk to the language of work that's needing done, that can be one thing. But you don't necessarily want to have somebody at an open house for no reason.
Right. So
Yeah,
you
so
said lender and insurance.
home insurance. Yep,
Insurance,
because
right?
those are the
Insurance?
two. Yep.
Okay,
Those are
got
the
it.
two that are most applicable to buying or selling a house. Now, a home inspector can also be there, but that's going to get a little bit kind of more into the weeds. They just are oftentimes willing to help with things. Now, a landscaper or a contractor or somebody that's going to fix up the house or give a little bit more realistic expectations as what's needed if it's a house that needs a little bit of work, that's okay too. You don't want to get too in the weeds of somebody that is maybe overestimating or making the house seem like it needs more work than it does, if that makes sense. Good question.
Yeah, Austin,
Um,
if I could touch on that too, coming from that world, I think it would be a good idea before your open house to have the guy, I say guy, it could be a girl, the construction person walk through and maybe give you an idea of what certain things would cost. But if you put them in front of, prospective buyers, they're going to talk it up and talk about all their services and everything they can do in that house. And it's going to seem like it's a money pit. So have them come by, give you estimates, leave their card behind and say, have this guy, these are some of the things that we're talking about could be done and potential expenses, but do not let him talk to the buyers.
Exactly right. Yeah, you don't want to. You always want to set the expectations with anybody that you're going to have in the open house beforehand. And same thing with people can also co-sponsor or help with open houses without physically being there, or they can pop by, drop off some stuff, and then leave. They don't necessarily have to sit there and co-host it with you. They can co-sponsor it with you. So it does kind of depend on the property itself, obviously, but then also it's going to depend on your relationship with the partner. That's a really good point. Yeah, David, you got a question?
Excuse me. Yes, Austin. Sorry, I'm losing my voice still. On the first slide, I waited to the end. Excuse me. On the first slide about the time frames, about when to do what hour. Is there a version of that for dual career people? Like if I'm working 8 to 5, how do I try to do the same amount of work here? I'm sure Saturdays and Sundays will come into play in my case, but is there a way of breaking this down from say, 6 to 8, doing certain things in the evening, dual career? As I've talked before, I'm not always super busy at work. Like this week, Tuesday and Thursday, I'm gonna be out in the field. I couldn't do any of these things, but maybe today, Wednesday, and Friday I could, but that changes week to week. So is there a way of breaking this down for evening time or weekends?
Yep. That's a great question. So, couple of takeaways from that. The most important thing you can be doing, even if you're dual career, is lead generation. So the first thing we're going to look at is taking that 9 to 12 block and making that happen no matter what. It really, what you can do is kind of shrink it a little bit and do kind of 2 hours a day would be ideal if you can get to that, to like a 6 to 8, like you said, or a 5:30 to 7:30 of sorts. Now, what you can do is some of this prepare stuff and some of the follow up can maybe take place during the day in between appointments or when you're working your other job. Maybe you're on a lunch break and you can prepare who you're going to call that evening while you're eating lunch. So there's ways that you can kind of skin the apple, so to speak, throughout the day. Now, at the same time, the most important stuff is going to be right in here. Now, if you can only do 2 hours, focus on the database and focus on follow up. If you can do 3 hours, that's when we'd add that third hour in. Now, the appointments are going to happen, obviously, when they need to happen. A lot of dual career people have success with planning their appointments on the weekends, and their lead generation takes place Monday through Friday after hours. So they're doing that 2 to 3 hours of lead gen every single day after hours, and then they're planning their appointments on the Saturdays and Sundays. So they don't really have to have a day that looks like this on Saturdays and Sundays. Now, they may be in showings all day Saturday because that's when their appointments happen, or all day Sunday. The other thing that you can lean on is we have agents in our office that are happy to help dual career people with their clients. And now you have two ways of doing this. You can pay them hourly for their time. So, for example, if they're showing one of your buyers' houses, you could pay them $25, $30 an hour, something like that, for however long it takes them to show the houses. Or you can pay them a referral fee or a portion of the commission if they end up going under contract. So if you do have an appointment that comes up during the week that you just simply can't get to, don't lose that appointment or don't lose that opportunity time for the client. Reach out to the PC group or reach out to myself or one of the top ALC agents in the company, and let's get you help overlapping on that. And we can still keep the client committed to you. We can still work it as a kind of as a team, so to speak. And then the last piece of that is going to be work within your reason. If you're a dual career, the point or the goal is obviously to move to where real estate is full time. However, this ideal time block is for people that are full time real estate. So if you cannot get 3 hours of lead gen some days because you've worked a 9 to 5, that's okay. Be reasonable with yourself. But at the same time, the more we can squeeze in there, or the more overlap you can build in there, the better. That's a great question.
Thank you. No, thank you, Austin.
Yeah, of course. All right. Anything else before I got to log off? Awesome.
Let me ask one quick question, kind of to the group.
Yeah, go
Maybe
ahead.
somebody could answer this. Anybody know what the 10 o'clock mortgage thing is at the office today? It's never really been talked about.
I was there the last time they had one, Mike, and I was the only one there. So they really kind of made it whatever I wanted it to be. But it's basically, for whoever shows up, if there's something that they specifically have questions about mortgages, then they'll discuss that. Otherwise, if they have a ton of people, they have an agenda that they'll go through, but it's really talking about kind of the current products that they can offer, where the trends are, where they see the market going, that kind of thing. It's Harmony and Neil.
Okay. Yeah, being that it hasn't been advertised, I doubt anyone's showing up.
Yeah, I think they just started doing it like a month or two ago.
Great idea, but they need
Yeah,
to.
and it was kind of meant to start as, excuse me, now I'm coughing. It was kind of meant to start as more of like a mortgage 101, which, speaking of which, Jackson is supposed to be doing one in one of our group coachings upcoming, where he's going to come and just kind of do the same thing, answer some frequently asked questions and give you a general lowdown. I also suggest to agents to sit down with a lender. It doesn't matter if it's Harmony, Neil, or Jackson. Those are the three obvious ones that I would start with. But offer to go get coffee with them, or just sit down in one of the conference rooms with them. It can be 30 to 45 minutes. It can be an hour if you need that, but it's not very long, where you just ask them what the process looks like and how, if anything, that you could do to make their job easier, and what you think you should know as a new agent when it comes to the mortgage process. I did this when I was very new in the business, 15 years ago. I went and sat down with a couple of different lenders. It's how I got to know them, but it's really how I got to know quick and easy things, FHA, 3.5% down payment, those type of stuff. They will share that information with you, so you can kind of have tools in your tool belt to keep the conversation flowing around the loan. But I will always share with clients, you need to talk to a lender when it comes to the financing side. I get financing questions all the time, and yes, I may have my 2 cents, but 9 times out of 10, what I'm going to do is say, that's really a question for the lender. Let's bring Jackson in, or let's bring Neil in, or let's bring Harmony in, to make sure we're all on the same page. That said, definitely still go to these 10 o'clock trainings if you're available, especially if they are lower attendance. It may give you an opportune time to just kind of do that one-on-one thing, like Krista just said, while you're in there, where you can ask questions that you're already coming up with. But it's definitely meant to give you kind of a general overview of the process. They may talk about grants or programs or stuff they have coming up too. All right, any other questions? Cool. All right. Well, thank you all for being here today. I will see, hopefully, all of you, if not most of you, in person tomorrow. Because of the nature of what we're doing, we will likely not be recording it. If we do record it, it will be a recording. It will not be a live Zoom. So please be there if you can at 9 o'clock in the training room. And then this recording will go out a little bit later this afternoon. So if you want to watch it back, please do. And otherwise, I will see everybody tomorrow.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Austin.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Austin.
you.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
One more thing, Austin, I have the required training tomorrow for NRA ethics.
Oh, yeah, you told me that. Yep.
Yes, so I won't be there.
Okay. I'll get
didn't
with
we-
you off
didn't we-
air about- Huh? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
didn't we do that though with your property in Penrite?